The world seemed like a place of calm, of progress, and of ordinary life. People walked the streets unaware that the universe around them was filled with unseen dangers, invisible to the naked eye, yet powerful beyond imagination. Humanity had grown strong in its own way. Technology had reached heights that earlier generations could only dream of. Cities had become marvels of engineering, with towering skyscrapers, self-driving vehicles, automated systems managing resources, and communication networks connecting every corner of the planet. Information traveled faster than ever before, and people relied on machines to help them in almost every aspect of their lives. In homes, schools, and workplaces, life seemed comfortable, predictable, and safe. For most people, the day-to-day concerns of living, jobs, education, family, entertainment, filled their minds completely. Wars existed in some regions, yes, but nothing compared to the scale of the threat that loomed silently in the darkness beyond Earth. At the same time, humanity had reached new heights in exploration. Satellites orbited the planet, exploring space and sending back images of stars, planets, and distant galaxies. The idea of life beyond Earth was no longer science fiction. It had become a topic of serious research, debate, and speculation. Scientists and astronomers studied anomalies in the cosmos, tracking objects moving through space, trying to understand what else existed beyond their planet. But even as these bright minds reached further into the universe, they were unaware that they had already been noticed. In a corner of the galaxy, far beyond the sight of human telescopes, a fleet moved silently. It was not a fleet like the ones imagined in science fiction movies. It was disciplined, deadly, and undefeated. Its commanders had never known defeat. In their history, they had fought 164 battles against various civilizations across the galaxy, and every time their enemies were completely wiped out. No survivors. No signs left behind. This was not a species that took prisoners, negotiated peace, or allowed mercy. Their reputation was known throughout distant worlds as the ultimate destroyers, and yet, Earth was still oblivious to their approach. Back on Earth, ordinary people carried on with life. Children played in parks, laughing and running under the sun. Adults rushed through busy streets, minds filled with the concerns of bills, careers, and family. Students prepared for exams and learned about history, science, and literature, never imagining that their studies were taking place under the shadow of an invisible threat. Scientists in labs worked on experiments to cure diseases, build faster machines, and explore distant planets. Engineers constructed buildings that scraped the sky, while pilots and astronauts dreamed of traveling to stars far beyond human reach. The world was full of life, energy, and hope. People had a strong belief that the future was theirs to shape, that their progress and intelligence could protect them from any danger. Governments, too, had become stronger and more organized. Nations cooperated in ways they had never done before. International alliances had formed to address global problems: climate change, pandemics, and energy shortages. Space programs shared knowledge, and militaries trained in advanced defense techniques, preparing for threats they could imagine, though nothing as advanced or ruthless as the enemy approaching. Despite these efforts, there was a lack of awareness. No radar, no weapon, no technology on Earth could yet detect the kind of threat that the galaxy's undefeated fleet represented. Humanity's defenses were like a thin net, trying to catch a storm that approached silently, faster than any human eye could see. In homes and offices, people dreamed, laughed, and planned their futures. Families gathered for meals, sharing stories of their days. Children asked endless questions about the stars and the possibilities of alien life. Scientists gave lectures and debated theories about life in space. It was a time of curiosity, wonder, and hope. No one could imagine that their lives were about to be interrupted in a way that would challenge everything they believed about safety, survival, and existence itself. Meanwhile, the fleet that had won 164 battles prepared silently. Their ships moved with perfect coordination, using technology that could detect every electromagnetic wave, every signal, and every movement from thousands of miles away. To them, Earth was just another target, a planet filled with life unaware of the predator that approached. They had no interest in negotiations, no desire to communicate. They had only one purpose: to conquer and erase. The way they moved was precise, calculated, and terrifying. Unlike humanity, which relied on defense systems that could be outsmarted, this species had strategies perfected through centuries of war. Their victories had become legendary across the galaxy, and their methods were efficient. leaving nothing behind to suggest that a civilization had ever existed. Despite all of this, life on Earth continued in blissful ignorance. People did not notice the small disturbances, tiny anomalies in space, faint signals intercepted by instruments, or the occasional disappearance of distant satellites. These were minor puzzles for scientists and analysts, quickly dismissed or rationalized. People were too busy living, dreaming, and imagining a future filled with promise. Governments issued routine reports, often with the assumption that all systems were functioning normally. Media outlets focused on human affairs, sports, politics, entertainment, completely unaware that a far greater story was unfolding in the stars. Even the scientists who speculated about extraterrestrial life could not have imagined the scale or nature of the threat. Some studied distant exoplanets and galaxies, hoping to detect intelligent life. Some analyzed cosmic anomalies, searching for clues. A few even theorized about hostile civilizations, but the idea of a fleet undefeated in 164 battles was beyond comprehension. Humanity's imagination, while powerful, had limits. The mind could picture advanced technology, alien creatures, and cosmic wars, but the reality was always far stranger and more terrifying than fiction. People's daily routines, their sense of security, and their understanding of the universe created a false sense of comfort. They believed that if danger ever came, they would have time to respond, to react, to survive. They did not realize that the universe was not bound by human timing or human comprehension. The enemy that approached did not negotiate, did not wait, and did not hesitate. They had learned from countless civilizations that hesitation could cost them victory, so they moved with unwavering precision, ensuring that nothing could escape their grasp once they committed. Even in this calm, there were glimpses of human greatness. Scientists had built machines that could explore the solar system. Doctors had cured diseases that had plagued humans for centuries. Engineers had built structures that defied gravity. Artists painted visions of the future, imagining what humans might achieve when they reached for the stars. Humanity's achievements were remarkable, a testament to intelligence, creativity, and resilience. And yet, none of these accomplishments mattered to the approaching fleet. To them, progress was irrelevant. Survival was irrelevant. Life was irrelevant. What mattered was domination, and Earth in its innocence had become the next target on a long list of conquered worlds. In the midst of all this, the ordinary people of Earth continued their lives. Children laughed, adults worked, and the world turned with quiet determination. There was a sense of stability, a feeling that things would continue as they always had. Even those who speculated about danger felt powerless, unable to imagine a defense against an enemy so advanced. And so life went on, filled with hope, curiosity, ambition, and dreams, unaware that the calm before the storm was not just metaphorical. The storm existed beyond human vision, beyond comprehension, moving closer with every passing day. This was the stage on which the story would unfold. It was a time of innocence, of ordinary life, and of unshakable belief in human capability. It was the perfect moment for the universe to show that no matter how strong, how intelligent, or how creative humanity had become, there were forces in the cosmos that operated on rules far beyond human understanding. And so, as people went about their daily lives, the silent watchers in the galaxy prepared to descend, ready to test whether humanity's brilliance could survive the unthinkable. The story begins here, in this calm, ordinary world, a world full of life, progress, and dreams. Yet, beneath the surface, in the dark reaches of space, the undefeated fleet watched, waiting, and preparing for the moment when humanity would discover that the universe was far bigger, far stranger, and far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. Life on Earth continued as normal, but subtle changes in the skies and space began to ripple through human understanding. At first, these changes were small, almost unnoticeable. Satellites that orbited the planet occasionally disappeared without explanation, their signals vanishing as if swallowed by the void. Scientists at monitoring stations were puzzled. Equipment showed strange energy readings, patterns that did not match known natural phenomena or human activity. Some dismissed these readings as glitches in the instruments, minor malfunctions caused by cosmic radiation or software errors. Others, however, felt a strange unease. There were whispers in private circles among astronomers and astrophysicists that something unusual was approaching, something that defied explanation. Communication networks, too, began to show anomalies. Messages sent through satellites experienced unusual delays or sudden drops. Military and research networks reported minor disruptions that were difficult to trace. Analysts scrambled to understand what was happening, but their tools and methods were built for problems within human control, technical failures, weather interference, or cyber attacks. No one yet imagined a threat originating from an alien fleet capable of flawless victories across the galaxy. To the casual observer, life on Earth continued in its usual rhythm, full of work, education, entertainment, and human interaction. People were completely unaware that the first signs of invasion had already begun. Governments and space agencies took notice. Military analysts, scientists, and engineers began to see patterns forming from these anomalies. Small, scattered incidents across the globe hinted at something unusual, perhaps intentional. Satellites vanished in precise orbits. Radio signals were blocked, and energy readings indicated controlled interference rather than random cosmic events. Reports were quietly filed and shared among top officials, while ordinary citizens remained in ignorance. Analysts compared these patterns with historical interstellar conflicts. Though humanity had only recently begun exploring the concept of contact with extraterrestrial intelligence, there was no precedent for what was about to happen, no experience that could fully prepare them. Some countries responded by increasing their defenses. Radar systems were fine-tuned. Satellites scanned the sky for unusual movement, and military bases went on higher alert. Scientists worked day and night to decode mysterious signals coming from deep space, signals that did not match any natural pattern known to humankind. Some theorized that these signals might be the first attempts at communication, while others feared they were a precursor to a more sinister approach. Yet even with all this effort, the scale of the threat was beyond comprehension. Humanity had no frame of reference for the enemy that had already won 164 battles, wiping out civilizations with precision and efficiency. Meanwhile, the rest of the world remained unaware of the approaching danger. Ordinary life continued with an air of innocence. Children played, families gathered, businesses thrived, and governments worked on internal issues and policies. Even in space programs, while scientists and astronauts discussed exploration and colonization, no one truly expected an immediate existential threat. Humanity's optimism, curiosity, and confidence blinded it to the reality that the universe was vast, filled with powers that humanity had never imagined and could barely understand. The ordinary rhythms of life carried on, even as a storm built silently above and beyond the atmosphere. The strange signals became more frequent and complex. Scientists and engineers noticed patterns that suggested intelligence, design, and intention. These were not random cosmic fluctuations, but deliberate attempts at interference. Military analysts began to compare the patterns with known strategies of advanced forces from theoretical models, and the unsettling thought emerged: perhaps something highly intelligent was approaching Earth. Still, no one predicted the scale or brutality of what was coming. Most people were content to trust in their technology, governments, and scientists, believing that Earth could handle any challenge that might appear in the sky. In private, some of the world's brightest minds began to theorize about the possibilities. Could these anomalies be a warning? Could they indicate a civilization observing Earth, waiting to make contact or to test humanity's capabilities? Conferences and secret briefings discussed potential responses, from negotiation to preemptive defense. Yet all of these plans were speculative. Humanity had no real experience dealing with interstellar invaders, and the more they investigated, the more they realized the limits of their understanding. The enemy, who had never lost a battle, possessed strategies and technologies beyond human comprehension. For every scenario Earth prepared, there were 100 unknown variables that could render those plans useless. Civilian scientists were caught between excitement and fear. Some saw the anomalies as an unprecedented opportunity to study intelligent extraterrestrial life. Others recognized the signals as potential harbingers of catastrophe. Private research groups collaborated, trying to interpret the data to prepare humanity for the unknown. They simulated attacks, developed new defensive strategies, and considered evacuation plans for critical locations. Despite all their effort, there was a sense of futility. They were only scratching the surface of what was coming. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens began noticing subtle changes in the sky. Satellites occasionally fell from orbit, sometimes burning up in bright streaks that fascinated onlookers. Radio waves and communication signals occasionally disrupted, leading to minor but unexplainable technological failures. Weather satellites recorded anomalies, unusual energy bursts in the upper atmosphere that scientists could not explain. Conspiracy theories began to spread, rumors circulated, and curiosity piqued, but no one could grasp the enormity of the approaching alien fleet. People speculated about natural phenomena, secret government tests, or experimental technologies, but none imagined an entire fleet, undefeated across the galaxy, moving silently toward their planet. Governments tried to maintain calm. Military analysts delivered careful reports, noting patterns but emphasizing that no direct threat had been observed. Civil authorities focused on reassurance, avoiding panic. Yet behind the closed doors of top-level meetings, a growing sense of urgency developed. Strategists understood that the anomalies could indicate an approaching force far beyond any human capability. They debated response strategies, alerting the public, attempting first contact, preparing defenses, but each option carried immense risk. They were confronting a situation with no historical precedent, no proven defense, and a potential enemy that had already demonstrated perfect execution in hundreds of previous campaigns. The alien fleet itself moved with patient precision. Its commanders observed Earth silently, calculating, monitoring, and waiting for the right moment. They had no need to hurry. Victory was inevitable, given their experience and preparation. Their approach was measured, deliberate, and terrifyingly efficient. Earth's signals, satellites, and communications were noted and analyzed by these invaders as part of their tactical planning. They were not concerned about humans discovering them too soon. In fact, the subtle anomalies were part of their strategy, designed to observe, confuse, and assess the planet's readiness for defense. By the time humans fully understood the danger, it would be far too late to respond effectively. Even in the face of growing evidence, human scientists struggled to convince the broader public. Data was complicated, technical, and difficult to interpret. Reports that suggested possible alien interference were met with skepticism, often dismissed as overreactions. The ordinary citizens continued their routines, living their lives as if nothing had changed. People focused on the immediate world around them: jobs, families, education, and entertainment, oblivious to the silent calculations of a fleet approaching from the stars. Humanity's focus on daily life, while natural, created a dangerous blind spot. They were prepared for ordinary challenges, disasters, and conflicts, but not for a foe whose experience and technology were unmatched across the galaxy. Throughout this period, the story of humanity's first encounter with a true existential threat unfolded in quiet, almost invisible ways. The signals, anomalies, and strange disappearances built tension, a growing sense that something was wrong. Military and scientific organizations worked tirelessly to interpret the data, often without sharing the full scope with the public to avoid panic. Families, students, and workers carried on in blissful ignorance. The contrast between normal human life and the silent, methodical preparation of an unbeatable alien force created a tense, dramatic backdrop. An invisible storm gathering on the horizon while humans remained unaware of its scale and intent. By the end of this period, Earth had already been observed, analyzed, and partially mapped by the aliens. Every communication signal, every satellite orbit, every energy reading had been carefully catalogued. The undefeated fleet had begun to assess human defenses, understanding strengths and weaknesses, calculating the most efficient way to strike. And yet humanity continued its routines, completely unaware. Life carried on in schools, hospitals, offices, and homes. Children dreamed, adults planned, and the world seemed unchanged. This was the moment of tension, the stage for what was about to come. Humanity had glimpses of the approaching danger, but these were subtle, easily misinterpreted. Scientists and analysts saw the patterns, governments tried to understand them, and ordinary people lived in peace. The stage was set for the next phase, the first direct confrontation, the warning signs that humanity could no longer ignore, and the terrifying realization that a force undefeated in 164 battles was now moving directly toward their planet. The calm, the mystery, and the subtle signs had built suspense and prepared the narrative for the moment when the invisible threat would finally make its presence undeniable. The first real signs of danger arrived suddenly, with a force and precision that left humanity stunned. The alien fleet, undefeated in 164 battles, appeared near Earth with breathtaking speed, their ships larger and more advanced than anything humans had ever imagined. From space, the fleet looked like a constellation of immense dark silhouettes against the blackness, each vessel radiating power and purpose. Humanity's early warnings, the subtle anomalies and strange signals suddenly made sense. The calm and ignorance of everyday life were gone. Panic spread, confusion reigned, and the true scale of the threat became painfully clear. Cities across the globe watched as satellites, the silent guardians of communication and observation, were systematically disabled. Entire networks of satellites fell one by one, not destroyed in random accidents but targeted with incredible accuracy. Communications faltered and once dependable systems went dark. Governments tried to maintain order, but without their eyes in orbit, coordination became chaotic. Military analysts scrambled to adapt, sending fleets and defense units into high alert. But even their most advanced weapons seemed insignificant in the face of the alien technology. Humans had never faced an enemy that could operate with such precision and intelligence. The first attacks on Earth's surface were terrifying. Major cities experienced sudden, localized disasters as alien ships unleashed energy weapons far beyond anything humans had ever built. Skyscrapers crumbled, infrastructure melted, and technological systems failed under the assault. Yet humanity responded instinctively, with courage, ingenuity, and desperation. Military forces mobilized with speed and discipline, trying to defend key locations, evacuate civilians, and assess the enemy's capabilities. Fighter jets launched, missile systems fired, and defensive shields activated, but the alien technology was on a different level entirely. Their attacks were swift, precise, and designed to overwhelm. Human weapons either bounced harmlessly off the shields of the alien ships or were neutralized before reaching their target. Despite the overwhelming force, humans did not give up. Soldiers and pilots fought with bravery, engaging the enemy in ways that reflected both courage and desperation. Small groups executed daring maneuvers, striking at weak points identified through observation, trying to buy time and protect civilians. Resistance formed quickly in pockets around the globe. Volunteers and trained personnel alike threw themselves into the defense, showing ingenuity in the face of annihilation. They improvised using guerrilla tactics, makeshift weapons, and knowledge of local terrain. Some managed minor victories, delaying alien advances in limited areas. But these efforts could not change the course of the invasion. The aliens were experienced, methodical, and patient. Every human strategy was anticipated, countered, and neutralized. Amid the chaos, ordinary citizens experienced the horror firsthand. Families fled their homes. Streets filled with panic, and cities that had once symbolized progress became scenes of destruction. The suddenness of the invasion meant that evacuation was often impossible, and many people witnessed entire neighborhoods vanish in minutes. Emergency shelters overflowed, medical facilities were overwhelmed, and governments struggled to maintain order. The contrast between normal life just days before and the terror unfolding now was jarring. Humanity, accustomed to thinking of itself as resilient and capable, suddenly faced a reality in which all their achievements, knowledge, and technology seemed inadequate. Yet even in the midst of destruction, human determination shone. Scientists and engineers worked frantically to understand alien technology, trying to find weaknesses or ways to disrupt the attacks. Civilian volunteers helped wherever they could, moving supplies, rescuing survivors, and maintaining communication in areas where systems still worked. Communities came together, creating temporary shelters and organizing evacuations. Even children and teenagers contributed by helping neighbors or relaying messages. Humanity's collective effort reflected both intelligence and heart, a spirit that refused to surrender despite overwhelming odds. The alien fleet, however, demonstrated why it had never lost a battle. Their ships moved in perfect coordination, responding instantly to human resistance. They analyzed strategies, predicted human actions, and adjusted attacks with terrifying efficiency. Every countermeasure developed by humanity was met with an adaptive response. Energy weapons targeted clusters of defense systems, disabling entire sectors of the planet's military infrastructure. Drones and automated units deployed by the aliens infiltrated and sabotaged human forces with calculated precision. Resistance that seemed clever or innovative was quickly rendered ineffective. Every move, every attempt to fight back, only confirmed the unmatched capability of the invaders. As the invasion continued, humanity realized that their understanding of war and combat was insufficient for this new reality. Traditional military doctrines failed, technology that had given humans confidence was useless, and global coordination was nearly impossible. Leaders across nations attempted to communicate, share intelligence, and coordinate defenses, but the speed and unpredictability of the alien attack made it almost impossible to respond effectively. Panic, confusion, and fear spread, yet there were still acts of incredible bravery. Pilots carried out missions knowing they might never return. Soldiers defended cities to the last possible moment. Scientists and engineers risked their lives experimenting with new technology to counter the alien threat. Even in despair, humanity's courage was undeniable. The invasion did not only target military and infrastructure. Alien forces aimed to dismantle human society entirely. Energy strikes and orbital bombardments created chaos, making it difficult for emergency services to respond. Communications were disrupted, transportation networks destroyed, and basic services collapsed. Yet, despite this, people found ways to help each other, relying on human instincts, intuition, and solidarity. Communities created improvised hospitals, shelters, and supply chains. Families stuck together, strangers helped one another, and humans adapted to the sudden, overwhelming threat in ways that reflected resilience, ingenuity, and compassion. In the midst of this chaos, strategic decisions were made that would define humanity's response. Governments activated contingency plans, deploying remaining forces to protect critical assets, knowledge, and population centers. Scientists prepared emergency protocols, safeguarding databases, research, and cultural archives. Even as cities fell and defenses were overwhelmed, small teams carried out missions to preserve the essence of human civilization. These acts were heroic, though they often went unnoticed amidst the larger-scale destruction. Every successful evacuation, every rescued archive, and every act of defiance represented humanity's determination to survive, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. The psychological impact of the invasion was immense. Citizens confronted the reality that the universe was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Fear and despair were widespread, yet a remarkable human trait emerged: the ability to adapt, endure, and resist. Despite witnessing destruction on a scale never seen before, humans continued to fight, continued to help one another, and continued to plan for survival. It was a test not just of military might, but of spirit, courage, and ingenuity. At the same time, the alien fleet demonstrated why it had never been defeated. Every human tactic, every attempt to fight back was anticipated and neutralized. The aliens observed human behavior carefully, adjusting attacks, exploiting weaknesses, and using intelligence gathered from previous battles. Their efficiency was terrifying, their precision unmatched, and their focus relentless. They did not rely on brute force alone. They combined strategy, technology, and observation to ensure complete domination. Humanity faced an enemy that understood the concept of war better than they did, an opponent whose record of 164 victories was no accident. Despite the overwhelming odds, humanity's spirit remained unbroken. Small victories, acts of heroism, and the courage to continue resisting highlighted the resilience of the human race. Groups of defenders managed to delay alien advances, providing precious time for civilians to evacuate or for scientists to protect critical knowledge. Every effort, no matter how small, was significant. The contrast between humanity's determination and the alien fleet's efficiency created a dramatic tension, showcasing both the vulnerability and the enduring spirit of humankind. The invasion of Earth was not just a military campaign, it was a psychological and existential crisis. Humans faced the reality that their civilization, history, and achievements could be erased in moments. Yet even in despair, they adapted, innovated, and resisted. From small towns to major cities, from scientists in labs to soldiers on battlefields, humans acted with courage, intelligence, and creativity. Their response was a testament to the strength of the human spirit, even when confronted with a seemingly invincible foe. By the end of this phase, humanity had realized the scale of the threat fully. The alien fleet was unmatched, its technology and experience far beyond anything Earth could muster. Yet even in the face of inevitable defeat, humans had shown their ingenuity, courage, and resilience. Families, communities, scientists, and soldiers had all played their part in resisting an enemy that had never known failure. It was a moment of both tragedy and heroism, a point at which humanity confronted the reality of annihilation, but refused to surrender entirely. This period marked the transition from ignorance to awareness, from calm to chaos, and from routine life to desperate survival. Humanity had finally seen the true nature of the enemy, and though the odds were overwhelming, the story of bravery, ingenuity, and resistance would be remembered. The invasion had begun, and the stage was set for humanity's last, desperate efforts to survive, preserve knowledge, and resist the forces that threatened to leave no trace of their existence. As the alien fleet continued its relentless assault on Earth, humanity faced the stark reality that survival as a whole civilization was no longer guaranteed. Cities lay in ruins, infrastructure was decimated, and communication networks had been reduced to scattered fragments. People had witnessed destruction on an unimaginable scale, and the losses were staggering. Despite all this, human ingenuity, courage, and determination began to shine in the darkest hours. Leaders, scientists, military strategists, and ordinary citizens realized that even if Earth could not be defended in its entirety, there were still ways to preserve the essence of humanity, knowledge, culture, and life itself. Secret plans had been developed long before the full scale of the invasion. In anticipation of such an unprecedented event, some of the world's brightest minds had prepared emergency protocols to safeguard human history, art, scientific discoveries, and even genetic material. These were hidden in underground vaults, remote research stations, and secure digital archives scattered around the globe. As the alien fleet advanced, these protocols were activated. Teams of scientists, engineers, and military personnel worked tirelessly to ensure that what made humanity unique, its creativity, intelligence, and diversity, would survive, even if most of the population could not. Evacuation efforts began with astonishing speed and coordination. Critical personnel, including scientists, engineers, and skilled individuals, were transported to hidden shelters and protected areas designed to withstand alien attacks. These shelters were stocked with food, medical supplies, water, and technology necessary to continue research and maintain knowledge for future generations. Large-scale genetic archives were also secured, containing the DNA of humans, plants, animals, and other forms of life essential to preserving biodiversity. Humanity's greatest minds had realized that even if the physical cities were destroyed, the seeds of survival could be preserved, ensuring that the story of humanity did not end completely. Meanwhile, the remaining military forces executed desperate but heroic actions to divert the alien fleet's attention. Small, highly trained units engaged in daring operations, drawing enemy forces away from critical evacuation sites. These units were often sent into missions with little chance of survival, their goal not to win the battles outright, but to create opportunities for others to escape. Explosions rocked cities, streets became battlegrounds, and smoke and fire filled the skies. But these sacrifices allowed vital resources, technology, and people to be moved to safety. Humanity had realized that brute force alone could not stop the invaders, but courage, strategy, and selflessness could still make a difference. The psychological toll on the survivors and those carrying out these operations was immense. Soldiers and volunteers knew that they were facing near certain death, yet they acted with determination and focus. Families were torn apart and countless lives were lost in the chaos. Yet even in despair, acts of heroism and solidarity emerged. Strangers helped each other. Communities formed protective networks, and the human instinct to survive and protect others became a powerful force. The invasion had forced humanity to confront its mortality on a scale never experienced before. And yet in these moments of fear, humanity's noblest traits shone brightest. As the aliens pressed their advantage, humanity's defenses continued to weaken under the relentless assault. Cities that had once been thriving centers of culture and progress became battlefields and rubble. Skies burned with the light of energy weapons. Buildings collapsed and the ground shook under the impact of alien strikes. Despite this, human resistance never completely faltered. Small groups of fighters, scientists, and engineers coordinated guerrilla-style tactics, striking quickly and then disappearing before the enemy could respond. Though these efforts could not stop the fleet entirely, they slowed the destruction just enough to give critical operations a chance to succeed. One of the most remarkable aspects of humanity's response was the preservation of knowledge. Scientists worked in makeshift laboratories and hidden facilities to save digital archives, books, and cultural artifacts. Libraries were copied, research papers encrypted, and advanced technology blueprints were secured in formats designed to survive even the most extreme conditions. This was not just an effort to protect knowledge, it was a statement of defiance. Even if the aliens destroyed Earth's cities and population, humanity's history, achievements, and creativity would remain intact, a seed of hope for future generations. The aliens, while powerful and experienced, had not anticipated the depth of human resilience and ingenuity. They expected complete obedience and surrender, as they had seen with 164 other civilizations. Yet humanity did not yield so easily. Even under overwhelming pressure, humans adapted, innovated, and resisted in ways that surprised the invaders. Every minor victory, every successful evacuation, and every preserved archive demonstrated that humanity was more than just a collection of cities and weapons. It was an idea, a spirit and a will to survive that could not be easily erased. Evacuation efforts extended beyond humans. Efforts were made to preserve the planet's biodiversity, protecting plant and animal life from destruction. Specialized shelters housed endangered species, while genetic material was stored in secure facilities. This was a recognition that humanity's survival was connected to the survival of the natural world. Even as human cities fell, humans worked to ensure that Earth itself, or at least its living legacy, would endure. The scale and foresight of these operations reflected not only intelligence, but also compassion, a determination to preserve life in the face of seemingly unstoppable destruction. The final stages of humanity's resistance were both tragic and heroic. As the alien fleet concentrated its attacks on remaining population centers, human forces engaged in sacrificial missions to protect critical archives and evacuations. Soldiers, volunteers, and civilians risked everything to ensure that at least some fragment of humanity would survive. Cities burned and chaos reigned. But these final acts of courage allowed the most important elements of human civilization to be secured. Humanity's last stand was not just about fighting back. It was about ensuring continuity, about leaving a legacy even in the face of apparent annihilation. At the same time, communication and coordination between surviving groups became crucial. Those in hidden shelters and remote facilities shared intelligence, coordinated further evacuations, and ensured that resources were used as efficiently as possible. Despite the chaos, these efforts were remarkably organized, a testament to human ingenuity and cooperation. Every successful operation, whether rescuing civilians, securing archives, or relocating critical personnel, was a victory against overwhelming odds. These actions were not just tactical successes, they were moral and psychological triumphs, affirming that humanity's spirit could endure even the most devastating circumstances. By the time the alien fleet had swept through major regions, much of humanity's physical presence had been decimated, cities were leveled, and vast areas were rendered uninhabitable. Yet the essence of humanity, its knowledge, creativity, and the potential for future life had been preserved in secret. The aliens, who had expected complete domination and total control, were unaware that their victories were incomplete. Humanity had used strategy, intelligence, and foresight to leave a portion of its legacy untouched, a quiet defiance that no weapon could destroy. This period highlighted the contrast between raw power and resilience, between destruction and ingenuity. The aliens were unmatched in strength and experience, yet humans used their ingenuity, collaboration, and foresight to create a plan that ensured survival beyond the immediate battlefield. The story of humanity's last stand was not just about fighting. It was about protecting what truly mattered, making difficult sacrifices, and ensuring that the essence of human civilization would endure even if the planet itself appeared lost. In the end, humanity's efforts during these final stages were remarkable not just for their strategic brilliance, but for the courage and selflessness displayed by countless individuals. Ordinary citizens, soldiers, scientists, and volunteers acted with extraordinary bravery, often knowing that their lives would be lost. These acts of heroism, combined with meticulous planning, ensured that humanity's story would not end with the destruction of cities and infrastructure. Instead, it would continue in hidden archives, genetic vaults, and the hearts of those who survived, awaiting a future in which the seeds of human civilization could grow once more. The story of humanity's last stand on Earth was both tragic and inspiring. The physical world was devastated, and countless lives were lost. But humans demonstrated a capacity for courage, strategy, and foresight that even the most experienced invaders could not fully anticipate. By acting decisively, creatively, and selflessly, humanity ensured that its legacy would endure, laying the foundation for eventual recovery and the possibility of rebuilding in the future. In the face of overwhelming power, humanity's intelligence, determination, and spirit became the true weapon that would defy extinction. When the dust settled and the alien fleet departed, Earth appeared eerily silent. Cities that had once thrived were now nothing but ruins. Streets lay empty, buildings crumbled into jagged skeletons of steel and concrete, and fires burned in the remnants of what was once human civilization. From the perspective of the invaders, it seemed as if humanity had been erased, leaving no trace of its existence. Yet beneath this desolate surface, life endured in secret. Humanity, despite overwhelming odds, had preserved the most important parts of itself: its knowledge, its DNA, its culture, and its will to survive. The final phase of this story was not about destruction alone, but about resilience, hope, and the quiet triumph of the human spirit. In hidden underground vaults and remote bunkers, the last of humanity waited. Scientists, engineers, scholars, and their families huddled in secure facilities designed to withstand the most extreme conditions. These shelters were stocked with everything needed to survive for years: food, water, medical supplies, energy sources, and technology. Within these secure spaces, humanity had preserved vast archives containing literature, research, art, and historical records. Digital data, carefully encrypted and redundantly stored, ensured that the story of humanity would not be lost. Even in the absence of cities, governments, or traditional social structures, these archives represented continuity, a bridge between the past and the uncertain future. Genetic archives were another key part of humanity's survival. Stored in highly secure facilities, these collections contained the DNA of humans, animals, and plants, an insurance policy for the regeneration of life on Earth or elsewhere. The foresight of previous generations had ensured that even if the population had been reduced drastically, future generations could be recreated, giving humanity a second chance. Preserving life itself, alongside knowledge and culture, demonstrated the extraordinary adaptability and planning of humans in the face of complete annihilation. This was not just survival. It was preparation for a rebirth. Despite the physical devastation, humans continued to show courage and ingenuity. Small groups ventured out from shelters to assess damage, retrieve essential supplies, or repair critical equipment. Every trip outside the safety of the bunkers was dangerous. The alien fleet's weapons had left long-lasting hazards, including radiation zones, unstable structures, and environmental contamination. Yet these expeditions were necessary to maintain communication between isolated shelters, monitor environmental conditions, and gather information about remaining resources. Human determination persisted even in the most extreme conditions, a testament to the enduring spirit that had guided them through the invasion. Psychologically, the survivors faced immense challenges. Witnessing the annihilation of homes, cities, and loved ones created a heavy burden of grief, trauma, and loss. Yet they were sustained by purpose. They understood that their survival was crucial, not just for themselves but for the future of humanity. They were the custodians of knowledge, culture, and life itself. Each day became a careful balance between surviving in the immediate environment and maintaining hope for a future where humanity could thrive once more. In these moments of quiet struggle, the true character of humans revealed itself: the capacity to endure, adapt, and find meaning even in devastation. Communication between hidden groups became critical. Advanced technology, salvaged and adapted from pre-invasion sources, allowed isolated shelters to maintain contact. This coordination ensured that resources were distributed efficiently, knowledge was shared, and plans for eventual reconstruction were developed. Humans, even in small numbers, were capable of sophisticated organization. The lessons learned during the invasion about strategy, problem-solving, and collaboration became invaluable. These survivors were not only preserving the past but also preparing to rebuild, armed with the wisdom of experience and the memory of what had been lost. One of the most remarkable aspects of this period was the quiet resilience of human culture. Literature, art, music, and scientific discoveries survived in hidden archives, ready to inspire and educate future generations. These cultural artifacts were more than just records. They represented humanity's identity, creativity, and imagination. Even in the absence of cities, governments, or large populations, these preserved elements kept the essence of humanity alive. The aliens, unaware of these hidden caches, had considered their mission complete. From their perspective, victory was total. But humans had ensured that the story of Earth and its civilization was far from over. As time passed, the survivors began to explore beyond their shelters cautiously. They monitored the environment, surveyed the damage, and identified areas suitable for long-term habitation. These expeditions were slow and deliberate, as the world had changed drastically. Many regions were uninhabitable due to destruction or lingering hazards, yet the human drive to explore, adapt, and reclaim their world remained undiminished. Step by step, humans began to re-establish their presence, guided by the knowledge and resources they had preserved. Each success, no matter how small, reinforced their determination and provided hope that the human story was not over. The aliens, having achieved what they believed to be a perfect victory, departed without realizing that humanity's essence had survived. They recorded Earth as another successful conquest, another planet wiped clean. They were unaware of the hidden archives, the genetic stores, and the small but determined groups of humans who had survived. Humanity's clever strategy had ensured that, though their cities and population were severely reduced, the seeds for regeneration remained. The lesson here was profound. Even in apparent defeat, foresight, planning, and resilience could preserve life and knowledge against seemingly unstoppable forces. The survivors worked tirelessly to prepare for the future. Knowledge transfer became a priority, as experienced scientists and engineers trained younger members of the community in critical skills. Skills in engineering, medicine, agriculture, communication, and environmental management were preserved and adapted to post-invasion conditions. Humanity was no longer simply defending against an immediate threat. They were preparing to rebuild civilization from scratch if necessary. This preparation ensured that the next phase of humanity's story would not repeat past mistakes, that survivors would be equipped with both knowledge and experience to create a more resilient future. Social bonds became more important than ever. Communities formed within shelters, often based on skills, trust, and shared purpose. People supported each other emotionally, shared responsibilities, and maintained routines to provide structure in the midst of uncertainty. Families, friends, and strangers alike contributed to the survival effort, demonstrating the remarkable ability of humans to cooperate and adapt in extreme circumstances. These social structures, though small, represented the continuity of human civilization in its most fundamental form: cooperation, empathy, and shared goals. As months and years passed, the survivors began to take cautious steps toward the surface world. They observed the alien fleet's departure, the stabilization of environmental hazards, and the gradual regrowth of life in some regions. Slowly, humans began to reclaim land, re-establish agriculture, and rebuild critical infrastructure on a small scale. The process was painstakingly slow, but every step was a victory. The legacy of the invasion was not just destruction, it was a hard-earned lesson in resilience, planning, and the power of foresight. Humanity had survived not through brute force, but through intelligence, strategy, and the unwavering will to continue. The story of humanity's survival and preservation became a testament to the species' resilience. Though they had faced annihilation at the hands of an undefeated alien fleet, they had managed to ensure continuity. Knowledge, culture, and life itself had been preserved, allowing for the possibility of a full renaissance in the future. The survivors became the guardians of a world that had been nearly lost, carrying the lessons of bravery, sacrifice, and ingenuity forward into a future that they would now shape with new wisdom. In this quiet aftermath, the greatest triumph of humanity was not the destruction of the enemy. They could not compete with the alien fleet in raw power, but the survival of the human spirit itself. Even when cities fell and millions were lost, the essence of humanity endured. The careful preservation of knowledge, life, and culture ensured that future generations would inherit not just survival, but the chance to thrive. In the face of total annihilation, humans had found a way to endure, demonstrating that true strength lies not only in weapons or technology but in planning, courage, and the unbreakable desire to continue. The world remained scarred, but hope persisted. The survivors, guided by foresight, courage, and unity, represented the potential for a new chapter in human history. They were the living proof that even in the most desperate circumstances, life, intelligence, and culture could survive. Humanity's story, though nearly erased, would continue, not just as a tale of survival, but as a story of resilience, adaptation, and triumph against unimaginable odds. The aliens believed they had left no trace of humanity, yet the truth was clear. The spirit of Earth's people was hidden, waiting, and ready to rise again.